The trading station hung in the darkness of space like a metal flower with too many petals. Ships of all sizes came and went from its docking arms. Some carried food, some carried fuel, some carried things that decent beings did not talk about in polite company. Captain Daniel Cole had visited this station many times before, but he had never wandered into the section he now found himself in. He stood at the entrance of a massive hall filled with cages. Inside those cages were living beings. They sat or stood or lay curled up in corners. Some were large and muscular with thick arms meant for heavy work. Others were covered in fur or scales or feathers. All of them had one thing in common: they were for sale. Lisa stood beside him with her hand resting on the weapon at her hip. She was his first officer and his oldest friend. They had served together in the military years ago, before they both decided that taking orders was not for them. Now they ran cargo on the horizon's edge and answered to no one but themselves. "We took a wrong turn," Lisa said quietly. "The fuel depot is back the other way." Daniel knew she was right. They had come here looking for cheaper fuel cells and somehow ended up in the slave market. The Galactic Commerce Accords called these beings indentured servants. The fancy words made it sound almost acceptable, but Daniel knew what he was looking at. This was slavery dressed up in legal clothing. "Let's go," Lisa said and tugged at his sleeve. But Daniel did not move. His eyes had found something in the far corner of the hall. A small cage sat apart from the others. The beings walking through the market passed it without stopping. Buyers examined the strong workers and the skilled technicians. Nobody seemed interested in whatever was in that small cage. Daniel walked toward it. Lisa cursed under her breath and followed him. As he got closer, he saw what was inside. A young female alien sat with her back against the cage bars. She was small and thin with pale blue skin that looked almost transparent in the harsh station lights. Her eyes were large and silver like polished mirrors. She watched him approach but did not move or speak. A merchant noticed Daniel looking and hurried over. The merchant was a tall creature with gray skin and 4 arms that never stopped moving. "Ah, a human buyer," the merchant said with obvious delight. "You have excellent taste, but I must warn you about this one. She is defective." "Defective how?" Daniel asked. The merchant waved 2 of his arms in a gesture of disappointment. "She is. Her people were conquered 3 generations ago. They make decent servants when they are healthy, but this one is weak. She cannot lift heavy objects. She cannot work long hours. She gets sick easily. I have tried to sell her for 6 cycles now. Nobody wants her." Daniel looked at the young female. She met his gaze without flinching. There was fear in those silver eyes, but also something else. A quiet strength that refused to break even in this terrible place. "What happens if she does not sell?" Daniel asked. The merchant made a sound that might have been a laugh. "The station closes its market section tonight for cleaning. All unsold merchandise will be disposed of. It is more cost-effective than feeding them." Lisa grabbed Daniel's arm. "Daniel, no. Whatever you are thinking, stop thinking it." But Daniel was not listening to her. He was watching the female. She had heard the merchant's words. She knew she was going to die tonight, and still she sat there with her head held high. She would not beg. She would not cry. She would face her end with whatever dignity she had left. Daniel had seen that look before. He had seen it in the eyes of soldiers who knew they were not coming home. He had seen it in refugees fleeing destroyed worlds. He had seen it in the mirror on his worst days. "How much?" he asked. The merchant blinked all 4 of his eyes. "Excuse me." "How much for her?" Lisa pulled him aside and spoke in a harsh whisper. "Have you lost your mind? We cannot afford another crew member. We can barely keep fuel in the tanks, and buying slaves goes against everything we believe in." Daniel kept his voice calm. "I am not buying a slave. I am buying her freedom. The moment she steps on my ship, I will remove that collar and let her go wherever she wants. And if she has nowhere to go, if she has no one, what then?" Then we figure it out together." Lisa stared at him for a long moment. Then she sighed and rubbed her forehead. "You are going to get us killed one day with your soft heart." "Probably," Daniel agreed, "but not today." He turned back to the merchant. "Name your price." The merchant could not believe his luck. He named a sum that was barely more than the cost of disposing of a body. Daniel paid it without bargaining. The merchant opened the cage and pulled the female out by her arm. She stumbled and nearly fell. Daniel caught her and steadied her on her feet. She was so light. He could feel her bones through her thin clothing. When was the last time anyone had fed her properly? "She is yours now," the merchant said happily. "All sales are final, no refunds for defective merchandise." Daniel ignored him. He looked down at the young female who barely reached his chest. "What is your name?" She stared at him with those silver eyes. Her voice was soft and rough from disuse. "I am called 7. The number is my designation in the registry." "Well, my name is Daniel. This is Lisa. We are going to take you somewhere safe now. Can you walk?" Nodded slowly. She did not understand what was happening. Every buyer who had looked at her before had seen only a worthless thing to be used and discarded. This human looked at her like she was a person. They walked out of the slave market together, expected to feel the shock collar activate at any moment. She expected to be punished for hopping, but nothing happened. The human kept his hand on her shoulder, gently guiding her through the crowded station corridors. When they reached the docking bay, where the horizon's edge waited, Lisa went ahead to open the airlock. Daniel helped up the ramp and into the ship. It was a small vessel worn by years of use but clean and well-maintained. The moment the airlock closed behind them, Daniel knelt down in front of. He reached for her neck and she flinched away, expecting pain. But his hands were gentle. He found the release mechanism on her collar and pressed it. The metal band clicked open and fell to the floor with a sound that echoed in the small space. Touched her bare neck. She had worn a collar since she was old enough to remember. The skin underneath was sensitive. "You are free now," Daniel said simply. "You do not belong to anyone. You can go wherever you want." Stared at him. The words made no sense. She had never been free. Her mother had been a slave. Her grandmother had been a slave. Freedom was a story that old whispered about in the darkness. It was not real. But the collar was gone, and this strange human was looking at her with something that might have been kindness in his eyes. "I do not understand," she whispered. Daniel smiled at her. It was a sad smile, but warm. "You will give it time." Lisa appeared with a blanket and wrapped it around thin shoulders. "Come on, let us get some food in you. When did you last eat?" Could not remember. She let Lisa lead her deeper into the ship. Behind her, Daniel picked up the collar and looked at it for a moment. Then he walked to the airlock, opened it, and threw the collar out into the station corridor. He watched it bounce and roll away before closing the door again. Nobody would ever put a collar on her again, not while he was breathing. Sat at the small table in the ship's kitchen and stared at the bowl of soup in front of her. Steam rose from the surface, carrying a smell that made her stomach ache with hunger, but she did not touch it. She did not dare. Lisa sat across from her, watching with patient eyes. "It is not poisoned. It is just vegetable soup. I made it myself." "I know," said softly. "I can feel that you mean me no harm." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "You can feel it. What does that mean?" Hesitated. This was the reason she was called defective. This was why no buyer wanted her. But these humans had already shown her more kindness than she had experienced in her entire life. Perhaps honesty would not be punished here. "My people have a gift," she explained. "We can sense the emotions and intentions of beings near us. It is like hearing music that others cannot hear. When someone feels anger, I feel it like heat on my skin. When someone means to hurt me, I know before they move." Lisa leaned forward with sudden interest. "You can read minds." "Not thoughts, only feelings, only intentions. It is why I was considered worthless for labor. Masters do not like servants who know when they are being lied to. They do not like slaves who can feel their cruelty before it happens. Daniel entered the kitchen and poured himself a cup of water. He had been preparing the ship for departure. That sounds like a useful ability to me, not defective at all. Looked at him trying to understand. You are not afraid of me. You do not wish to control what I sense. I have nothing to hide, Daniel said simply. Sense whatever you want. If you feel something from me that confuses you, just ask and I will explain. This was so different from everything had known. Masters always hated her ability. They punished her for flinching before they struck. They hurt her worse for knowing their intentions. And now this human was telling her to use her gift freely. She reached out with her senses and focused on Daniel. What she felt made her eyes widen. There was warmth there, protectiveness, a deep sadness that lived in his chest like an old wound, and underneath it all a fierce determination to do what was right even when it cost him. You bought me because you could not stand to watch me die, whispered, even though you cannot afford it, even though it makes no sense. Daniel shrugged, guilty as charged. Now eat your soup before it gets cold. Finally picked up the spoon. The first taste of warm food almost made her cry. She ate slowly at first and then faster as her starving body demanded more. Lisa quietly refilled her bowl twice without comment. When she was finally full, felt something strange. It took her a moment to recognize it. She felt safe. She had not felt safe since she was a small child in her mother's arms. What happens now? She asked. Lisa looked at Daniel. Daniel looked back at her. Some unspoken communication passed between them. Now we leave this station, Daniel said. We have cargo to deliver 3 systems away. After that we can take you wherever you want to go. Do you have family, a home world? Shook her head. My mother died when I was young. I do not know my father. My home world has been occupied for generations. There is nothing for me there but more slavery. Then you can stay with us until you figure out what you want, Lisa offered. We have an empty cabin. It is small, but it is private. You would let me stay, a stranger, an alien? Daniel smiled. Humanity spent thousands of years treating our own people as property based on the color of their skin or where they were born. We learned hard lessons about the evil of slavery. Some of us try to remember those lessons. Did not know what to say. She reached out with her senses again, searching for deception or hidden motives. She found none. These humans meant exactly what they said. She was still trying to process this when she felt something else. Something that made her entire body go rigid with terror. Cold minds were approaching the ship. Minds filled with violent intent and cruel anticipation. Someone is coming, she gasped. Someone dangerous. They mean to hurt us. Lisa was on her feet instantly with her weapon drawn. Daniel moved to the nearest console and pulled up the external cameras. 4 figures were walking down the docking arm toward the horizon's edge. They were tall reptilian beings with scaled skin and sharp teeth. The one in front wore the markings of a bounty hunter. Stay here, Daniel told. Do not come out no matter what you hear. He headed for the airlock with Lisa right behind him. Wanted to obey. She wanted to hide in the corner and make herself small like she had done her whole life. But something had changed inside her. These humans had risked their credits and possibly their lives to save her. She could not let them face danger alone. She crept out of the kitchen and found a hiding spot near the cargo bay where she could see and hear everything. Daniel opened the airlock before they could knock. He stood in the doorway with his arms crossed, looking completely unafraid. Lisa stood just behind him with her hand on her weapon. The lead stepped forward. His voice was a rasping hiss. I represent the trade syndicate. You have something that belongs to my employer. I have cargo, Daniel said calmly. All of it legally purchased with proper documentation. I am not talking about cargo. I am talking about the female you bought at the market. She was not meant for open sale. She was marked for private delivery to my employer. You have stolen his property." Daniel did not move. "I bought her fair and legal from a licensed merchant. The transaction is recorded in the station database. She belongs to no one now. I freed her." Made a sound that might have been laughter. "Freed her. Humans are even more foolish than I was told. It does not matter what you think you did. My employer wants her and he will have her. Give her to us now and we will let you leave with your ship and your lives." "And if I refuse?" His eyes narrowed. His 4 enforcers spread out behind him, hands moving toward their weapons. "Then we will take her anyway, and you will not be leaving at all." From her hiding spot focused her ability on. What she sensed made her blood run cold. He was lying. He had no intention of letting Daniel and Lisa live. He planned to kill them both and take the ship as well. The female was just an excuse. This was murder dressed up as business. She had to warn them. She stepped out of hiding before she could talk herself out of it. "He is lying," called out. Her voice shook, but she did not stop. "He plans to kill you both and take the ship. He was never going to let you live." His head snapped toward her. His eyes burned with anger at being exposed. Daniel glanced back at them, faced again. His expression had changed. The calm friendliness was gone. What remained was cold and hard. "You heard her," Daniel said quietly. "Now I know what kind of deal you are offering, so let me make a counter-offer. Leave now and I will let you walk away. Stay and we find out if bleed the same color as humans." Lisa had her weapon out now, pointed directly at its chest. The bounty hunter hesitated. He had expected easy prey. He had not expected resistance. Daniel reached for a button on the wall next to the airlock. "One more thing. I am activating the Human Mutual Defense Protocol. Any human ship in range will receive our distress signal. You might kill us, but you will have the entire human presence in this sector hunting you within the hour." He pressed the button. A light began to blink. Somewhere in the depths of space, a signal was racing outward at the speed of light, calling for help. His confident expression flickered. He had not planned for this. He had not expected one small human ship to be so much trouble. "This is not over," he hissed. "My employer has a long reach. You cannot protect her forever." "Watch me," Daniel replied. The standoff held for another long moment, then made a sharp gesture to his enforcers. They backed away slowly, never taking their eyes off Lisa's weapon. The bounty hunter gave Daniel one last look of pure hatred before turning and walking back down the docking arm. Daniel did not relax until they were out of sight. Then he closed the airlock and leaned against the wall, letting out a long breath. "That was close," Lisa said. "Too close." Daniel looked at. She was trembling, but she had not run. She had come out of hiding to help them, even though she was terrified. That took courage. "Thank you," he said. "Your warning might have saved our lives." Wrapped her arms around herself. "They will come back. Your signal will not scare them for long." "Maybe not," Daniel agreed. "But we will be ready, and you will not face them alone." For the first time since she could remember, believed that someone meant those words. She was no longer just a piece of merchandise to be bought and sold. She was someone worth protecting. The feeling was strange and wonderful and absolutely terrifying. The distress signal had been active for 20 minutes. Daniel stood at the bridge console watching the sensors while Lisa checked their weapons. Sat in the corner trying to make herself as small as possible. She could feel the tension in the ship like electricity in the air before a storm. "Maybe no one will come," Lisa said quietly. "We are far from the main shipping lanes. There might not be any human ships in range." Daniel shook his head. "Someone will come. Humans always answer the call." Did not understand this confidence. In her experience, beings looked out for themselves first and others never. The strong took from the weak and the weak suffered. That was the way of the galaxy. Why would strangers risk themselves for people they had never met? A light blinked on the console, then another, then a third. 3 ships responding, Daniel said with obvious relief. The Blue Dawn, the Northern Star, and the Lucky Strike, all human vessels, all heading this way. Lisa moved to stand beside him and looked at the readings. The Blue Dawn is a freighter, Northern Star is a transport, Lucky Strike is a salvage ship. None of them are military, none of them are armed for real combat. They came anyway, Daniel replied. That is what matters. Extended her senses, trying to feel the approaching ships. They were still too far away, but she could sense, and his crew lurking somewhere in the station. They had not left. They were waiting for an opportunity to strike. They are still here, she warned. They are planning something. Daniel nodded. I expected as much. Does not seem like the type to give up easily. 20 minutes later, the first ship docked at the station. The Blue Dawn was a bulky vessel covered in patches and repairs, but her engines hummed with power. A woman came down the boarding ramp with 4 crew members behind her. She was short and stocky, with dark hair streaked with gray and eyes that had seen too much of the universe. Captain Maria Santos, she announced. Got your signal. What kind of trouble are you in? Daniel met her at the docking bay entrance and explained the situation quickly. Maria listened without interruption. When he mentioned the slave market, and her expression hardened. Syndicate thinks they can murder humans and take our ships, she said flatly. They need a lesson in why that is a bad idea. The Northern Star arrived next. Captain Henry Park was a thin man with a calm face and steady hands. He brought 6 of his crew, all of them carrying weapons that looked well used. He listened to Daniel's story and nodded slowly. I have dealt with before, he said. They understand one thing, strength. Show them weakness and they take everything. Show them strength and they back down like the cowards they are. The Lucky Strike was last to dock. Captain Susan Grant was tall and broad-shouldered, with arms thick from years of salvage work. Her crew of 5 looked more like construction workers than fighters, but they carried their weapons with confidence. I was having a boring week anyway, Susan said when Daniel finished explaining. A little excitement is good for the blood. The 3 captains gathered in the Horizon's Edge cargo bay with their crews. Daniel introduced Lisa and then brought forward. She was terrified of so many strangers, but she forced herself to stand straight. This is, Daniel said. She was going to be killed because no one wanted to buy her. She is under my protection now. Maria looked at with surprisingly gentle eyes. Poor thing, how old are you? I do not know exactly, admitted. My people do not track years the way others do. I think I am young by human standards. Young enough to deserve a chance at a real life, Maria said firmly. You have nothing to fear from us, child. Any friend of a human is a friend of all humans. Reached out with her senses and touched the emotions of everyone in the room. What she found amazed her. These strangers had dropped everything and risked their ships and lives to help people they had never met. Not for money, not for power, simply because a distress signal asked them to come. I do not understand, she whispered. Why would you do this? You do not know us. Henry Park stepped forward. Let me tell you something about humans. Thousands of years ago on our home world, we did terrible things to each other. We enslaved our own kind. We killed millions because of the color of their skin, or where they were born, or what gods they. We nearly destroyed ourselves with our hatred. He paused and looked around at the gathered humans. But we learned. Slowly and painfully, we learned that all thinking beings have value. We learned that freedom is not just a word, but a right that belongs to everyone. We swore that we would never allow slavery to exist where we had the power to stop it. Susan Grant nodded. When one human calls for help, others answer. It does not matter if we are friends or strangers. It does not matter if the odds are against us. We show up. That is who we are. Felt tears forming in her silver eyes. Her people had once been free too, 3 generations ago before the conquerors came. The stories said that had helped each other the same way, but years of slavery had beaten that unity out of them. They had learned to trust no one and expect nothing. Maybe they could learn again. A alert chimed on Daniel's communicator. He checked it and his expression darkened. Is moving. He has gathered more enforcers. At least a dozen are heading this way. Maria smiled grimly. Good, let them come. We have a welcome prepared. The humans spread out through the docking bay, taking up defensive positions. Lisa handed a small communicator. Stay hidden. If anything goes wrong, press this button and run for the Northern Star. Henry's ship is the fastest. He will get you out of here. I do not want to run, Sid. I want to help. Lisa squeezed her shoulder. The best way you can help is to stay safe. These people came here for you. Do not let their effort be wasted. Nodded and found a hiding spot behind some cargo containers. From there, she could see the main entrance to the docking bay and sense anyone approaching. Arrived with his expanded crew. 12 warriors spread out behind him, all of them armed with weapons that looked designed to kill quickly and painfully. The bounty hunter stopped at the entrance and surveyed the scene before him. 4 human ships, nearly 20 human crew members, all of them armed, all of them standing together in a wall of quiet determination. This is not your concern, hissed at the newcomers. This matter is between me and the captain of the Horizon's Edge. Maria stepped forward. Wrong. The moment you threatened a human crew member, it became all of our concern. The woman you want is under human protection. You will not touch her. She is not human. She is a slave species, property. She is a person, Henry said coldly, and she is with us now. That makes her ours to protect. His eyes swept the gathered humans, could feel his calculations. His confidence was fatting. He had expected 1 ship and 2 crew members. He had not expected a small army. My employer is powerful, tried. The syndicate has connections throughout the sector. You are making dangerous enemies. Susan Grant laughed. It was not a friendly sound. The syndicate has been making enemies of humanity since we entered this sector. You steal our cargo. You attack our ships. You think we are weak because we prefer trade to war. She stepped closer to. The bounty hunter actually took a step back. We are not weak. We just prefer to solve problems peacefully. But when someone threatens our people, we remember that our ancestors conquered an entire planet. We remember that we spread across the stars through sheer stubborn refusal to give up. We remember that humans never stop fighting until the fight is over. The docking bay fell silent. Every warrior was looking at, waiting for orders. But the bounty hunter had no good options. He could fight and probably lose. He could retreat and face his employer's anger. Either way, this job had become far more costly than expected. This is not over, finally said. The words sounded hollow. My employer will hear about this. There will be consequences. Tell your employer to send his complaints to the Human Colonial Authority, Daniel replied. We have lawyers who love dealing with threats from criminal syndicates. Turned and walked away. His enforcers followed, looking relieved to escape without a fight. Watched them go and felt their anger and humiliation fading into the distance. When they were finally gone, the tension in the docking bay broke. Humans were laughing and clapping each other on the shoulders. Maria Santos walked over to Daniel and shook his hand firmly. Good work calling for backup. A lot of captains would have tried to handle this alone. A lot of captains would have ended up dead, Daniel admitted. I know my limits. Emerged from her hiding spot. The humans turned to look at her, and she froze, expecting judgment or disgust. Instead, she saw only smiles. Come here, child, Maria said warmly. You must be hungry after all that excitement. Let us find you something to eat and you can tell us your story. For the second time that day, felt the strange sensation of being welcomed. These humans had risked everything for a stranger. They had stood together against a common enemy without hesitation. Maybe this was what freedom felt like. Not just the absence of chains, but the presence of people who cared. Walked forward and let the humans surround her with their warmth and their strange, fierce loyalty. She did not know what the future held, But for the first time in her life, she was not facing it alone. The meal aboard the Horizon's Edge was the strangest experience of life. 4 human captains sat around the small table in the ship's common room, eating and drinking and laughing like old friends. Their crews mingled in the cargo bay, sharing food and stories. Sat between Daniel and Maria, feeling like she had wandered into a dream. "So there I was," Susan Grant was saying, "floating in the wreckage of a cargo ship with nothing but a suit light and a bad attitude. The salvage was worth a fortune, but they claimed I was stealing their property." "What did you do?" Lisa asked. Susan grinned. "I pointed out that they had abandoned the ship after a reactor leak. Under galactic maritime law, an abandoned vessel belongs to whoever claims it first. They threatened to sue. I told them to go ahead. My lawyer needed the entertainment." The humans laughed. Did not understand the joke, but she smiled anyway because the warmth in the room was contagious. Maria Santos leaned over and spoke quietly too. "You are very quiet, child. Are you all right?" Considered the question. Was she all right? She had been bought and freed and threatened and rescued all in the span of a few hours. Her entire understanding of how the universe worked had been shattered and rebuilt in a new shape. "I am confused," she admitted. "I do not understand why you all came. You do not know me. You owe me nothing. Coming here put your ships and your crews at risk." Maria nodded thoughtfully. "That is fair. Let me try to explain. When humans first left our home world and entered the galaxy, we were shocked by what we found. So many species, so many civilizations, and so many of them treated slavery as normal, as acceptable." She shook her head slowly. "We could not accept that. On Earth we fought wars to end slavery. Millions of humans died so that others could be free. When we found slavery thriving among the stars, it felt like a betrayal of everything our ancestors fought for." Henry Park joined the conversation. "The human colonial authority cannot outlaw slavery across the galaxy. We do not have the power or the right to impose our values on other species. But we can protect those who come under our care. We can offer shelter and freedom to anyone who asks. And when someone threatens that freedom," Susan added, "we show up, every time, no exceptions." Felt her eyes burning with tears she refused to shed. "My people used to be like this. The old stories say that stood together against any threat. We protected each other. We shared everything." "What happened?" Daniel asked gently. "The conquerors came. They were strong and we were peaceful. They killed our leaders and scattered our communities. They bred out our resistance over generations. Now most do not even remember the old ways. We are born into chains and we die in chains, and we accept it because we know nothing else." Maria reached out and took his hand. Her grip was warm and strong. "You remember. That means the old ways are not lost. They live in you." Look down at their joined hands. Blue skin against brown. 2 species separated by the vastness of space, yet connected by something deeper. The desire for freedom. The need to protect those who cannot protect themselves. "I want to help others," said suddenly. The words surprised her, but she knew they were true. Other slaves. I want them to know that freedom is possible." Daniel smiled at her. "That is a big goal for someone who was just freed today." "I know, but your signal brought 3 ships to help strangers. What if there was a signal for slaves? A way to tell them that someone cares? That escape is possible." The captains exchanged glances. Something passed between them. A shared recognition of an idea that might change things. "It would be dangerous," Henry said slowly. "The syndicates would hunt anyone who helped slaves escape. The legitimate governments would look the other way because slavery is legal under galactic law." "But it would not be impossible," Maria countered. "Humans have always excelled at doing the impossible when we believed in the cause." "We would need resources," Susan said practically. "Ships, credits, safe houses, a network of contacts willing to take risks." Lisa had been quiet throughout the conversation. Now she spoke up. "We have 4 ships right here, 4 crews who already proved they will fight for freedom. That is a start. Daniel looked at with new respect. You have been free for less than a day, and you are already planning a revolution. Ducked her head embarrassed. I did not mean to presume. I have no right to ask anything of you. You have every right, Daniel said firmly. You survived something terrible. You came out of it wanting to help others instead of just saving yourself. That takes courage. That takes heart. He stood up and addressed the other captains. I cannot speak for anyone else, but the horizon's edge is in. If there are slaves out there who need help, we will answer that call. Maria stood as well. The Blue Dawn stands with you. Henry nodded and rose. Northern Star is in. Susan was already on her feet. Lucky Strike loves a good cause. Count us in. Stared at them in disbelief. Just hours ago she had been waiting to die in a cage. Now 4 human captains were pledging their ships to a cause she had barely articulated. The universe had gone completely mad. Or maybe this was what sanity looked like. Maybe cruelty and slavery were the madness, and this fierce human loyalty was the cure. A chime from the communication console interrupted the moment. Daniel walked over and checked the message. His expression shifted from warmth to concern. News travels fast, he said. The syndicate has placed bounties on all of us. 10,000 credits for information on our ships, 50,000 for our capture. Only 50,000, Susan sounded offended. I am worth at least 100. Maria laughed, but her eyes were serious. They are trying to scare us, make us regret standing together. Will it work? Asked anxiously. Will you have to abandon me to protect yourselves? The 4 captains looked at her like she had suggested they start breathing vacuum. Abandon you, Henry said, after we just swore to help you change the galaxy. The bounties make things more interesting, Daniel admitted. But humans have never been deterred by danger. If anything, it makes us more determined. Lisa pulled up a star chart on the main screen. We should not stay at this station much longer. Too many eyes. Too many people who might want that bounty. Agreed, Maria said. We can rendezvous at the nebula. It is neutral territory with good places to hide. We can make plans there. The captains began organizing the departure. Crews returned to their ships. Supplies were redistributed to make sure everyone had what they needed. Within an hour, all 4 vessels were ready to leave. Stood at the viewport in the Horizon's Edge common room, watching the trading station shrink in the distance. Behind her, Lisa was plotting their course to the nebula. Daniel was handling the departure communications with station control. Everything felt unreal. This morning she had been a piece of merchandise waiting to be disposed of. Tonight she was part of something bigger, a movement, a cause, a family of strangers bound together by shared values. Maria's ship, the Blue Dawn, pulled alongside them. Through the viewport could see the older woman standing on her own bridge. Maria raised a hand in greeting, raised hers in return. I never thanked you properly, said to Daniel when he finished his communications. You risked everything for me, a worthless, defective slave. Daniel turned from his console and looked at her with those steady human eyes. You were never worthless. The people who called you that were blind. They could not see what you really are. What am I? Someone worth saving, someone who wants to save others, someone who can sense the truth in a galaxy full of lies. He smiled. That is not defective, that is extraordinary. Felt something shift inside her chest. A weight she had carried her entire life was beginning to lift. She had spent so many years believing she was broken, believing that her ability to sense emotions was a curse rather than a gift, believing that her weakness made her worthless. These humans saw her differently. They saw strength where others saw weakness. They saw potential where others saw defects. They looked at a damaged slave girl and saw a person worth fighting for. I will not let you down, she promised. Whatever happens next, I will make your faith in me mean something. Daniel put a hand on her shoulder. I know you will. Now get some rest. We have a long journey ahead and a lot of planning to do." Nodded and headed for the small cabin Lisa had prepared for her. It was barely bigger than her cage at the market, but it had a real bed and a door that locked from the inside. She could come and go as she pleased. No chains, no collar, no one to tell her when to sleep or wake. She lay down on the bed and stared at the ceiling. The hum of the ship's engines surrounded her like a heartbeat. Somewhere beyond the whole stars were streaming past as they traveled toward the nebula and whatever came next. For the first time in her memory, fell asleep without fear. 3 months had passed since the day Daniel Cole bought a dying slave and changed everything. The horizon's edge still flew the shipping lanes carrying cargo from port to port, but now she carried something else as well: hope. Stood on the bridge next to Lisa, monitoring the communication channels. She had learned so much in these 3 months: how to read sensor data, how to operate the basic ship systems, how to interpret the coded messages that flowed between vessels across the sector. She had also gained weight. Her pale blue skin no longer looked transparent and sick. Her silver eyes were bright with purpose instead of dull with despair. She smiled now. She even laughed sometimes. The sound still surprised her whenever it escaped her lips. "Cargo delivery confirmed," Lisa announced. "Payment received. We are clear to leave orbit." Daniel nodded from the captain's chair. "Set course for the nebula. Maria wants to meet." The nebula had become their unofficial headquarters. A vast cloud of gas and dust where sensors were unreliable and ships could hide from prying eyes. The 4 captains met there regularly to share information and coordinate their growing network. Word had spread through the alien slave communities. Whispers passed from cage to cage. Stories of humans who bought slaves only to free them. Stories of ships that appeared in the night and carried the desperate to safety. Stories of a small, blue-skinned female who could sense lies and helped others escape. The syndicate was furious. Their bounties had grown to ridiculous amounts, but somehow no one ever collected. The human captains were too careful. Their network of friends and contacts too loyal. Every time the syndicate got close, the humans slipped away. Stability had proven invaluable. She could sense deception in trade negotiations, allowing Daniel to avoid bad deals and dishonest merchants. She could feel danger approaching before it arrived, giving them time to escape or prepare. She could read the intentions of strangers and tell the humans who could be trusted. She was no longer worthless. She was essential. The journey to the nebula took 2 days. Spent most of that time in the common room reading everything she could find about human history. She was fascinated by their past, the wars they had fought, the mistakes they had made, the slow, painful progress toward the values they now held so dear. "You are reading about the American Civil War again," Daniel observed as he joined her with 2 cups of tea. Accepted the cup gratefully. "I cannot stop thinking about it. Humans killing other humans over the right to own people, and then the side that fought against slavery won. They changed everything." "It took a long time," Daniel said, "and it was not perfect even after the war ended. Change is slow and messy, but it happens. One choice at a time, one person at a time. Like buying a worthless slave at a market." Daniel smiled. "Exactly like that." They arrived at the nebula and found the other 3 ships already waiting. Maria's Blue Dawn, Henry's Northern Star, Susan's Lucky Strike. 4 vessels that had become the core of something larger than any of them had imagined. The captains gathered aboard the Lucky Strike for their meeting. Came along as she always did now. The humans had stopped treating her like a guest or a rescued victim. She was a full member of their strange little fleet, a partner in their impossible mission. Maria had news. "I received a message from a refugee ship. They heard the stories about us. They are asking for help." His heart jumped. Her people. She had not seen another since she was sold away from her mother as a child. "How many?" she asked. 37. They escaped from a mining colony in the outer systems. Their ship is damaged and they are running low on supplies. They do not know where to go. We can take them to the station, Henry suggested. The administrator there is sympathetic. He has sheltered refugees before. It is risky, Susan pointed out. 37 new arrivals will attract attention. The syndicate might hear about it. The discussion continued but was not listening. 37. 37 of her people who had somehow found the courage to escape. 37 lives hanging in the balance waiting for someone to help. I want to go, she said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. The refugee ship. I want to be there when we meet them. They need to see that one of their own made it. They need to know that the stories are true. Daniel studied her face. It could be dangerous. If it is a trap, you would be the prize they are looking for. I know, but some things are worth the risk. She met his eyes steadily. You taught me that. Daniel held her gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, we go together, all 4 ships. If it is a trap, we will be ready. The rendezvous point was a day's travel from the nebula, a quiet stretch of space far from shipping lanes or stations, the perfect place for a secret meeting or an ambush. The horizon's edge arrived first. Daniel kept the ship at a safe distance while sensors scanned for threats. Lisa had weapons ready, stood at the viewport straining her senses for any hint of hostile intent. A ship appeared on sensors, small and battered, running on minimal power. No weapons signatures, no escort vessels, just a single transport drifting alone in the darkness. I sense them, whispered. Fear, exhaustion, hope, so much hope, they are real. Daniel brought the horizon's edge alongside the refugee vessel. The other 3 human ships took up protective positions around them, creating a defensive perimeter. The airlock opened, stepped forward to be the first thing the refugees saw. They came through slowly, males and females and children, all of them thin and worn with the hollow look of beings who had known nothing but suffering. Their blue skin was pale. Their silver eyes were wide with disbelief. A female near the front saw and stopped. She was older with lines of pain etched into her face. She stared at like she was seeing a ghost. You are real, the female breathed. The stories are real, a who flies with humans, a who is free. Felt tears running down her cheeks. I am real, and so is your freedom. You are safe now. The humans will protect you. The older female fell to her knees. Others followed. They were not bowing in submission. They were weeping with relief. Generations of hopelessness finally breaking apart. Knelt down and took the older female's hands. What is your name? Sira, I was born Sira 12, but I do not want a number anymore. Then you are just Sira now. No numbers, no chains, no masters. You are a person. You have always been a person. The universe just forgot for a while. Daniel appeared beside. He looked at the refugees with gentle eyes. Welcome aboard. We have food and medical supplies. Take whatever you need. Rest. When you are ready, we will take you somewhere safe. The refugees stared at him. A human offering help without demanding anything in return. It went against everything they had been taught about the universe. But was smiling, and she was one of them, so maybe this impossible kindness was real after all. Hours later stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge watching the stars streak past. Behind them, the refugee ship followed escorted by their small fleet, 37, who would never wear chains again. Daniel joined her at the viewport. You did good today. They needed to see you. They needed to see all of us, corrected. Humans and working together. That is what gives them hope. That is what will change things. The galaxy is a big place. We are just 4 ships. Every flood starts with a single drop of rain. Turn to face him. You told me that, when I asked how a few humans could fight something as vast as galactic slavery. Daniel smiled. I did say that. I was hoping you would remember. I remember everything now, every kindness, every lesson, every moment that showed me what freedom really means. She looked back at the stars. The Syndicate thinks they can stop us with bounties and threats. They do not understand humans. They do not understand that you fight hardest for the things that matter most. And what matters most to you? Considered the question. 3 months ago, she would not have had an answer. She had been empty inside, a hollow thing waiting to be disposed of. Now she knew exactly what mattered. Family, she said. Not the family you are born into, but the family you choose. The people who see your worth when everyone else is blind. The people who stand beside you when the universe is against you. She looked at Daniel with those silver eyes that could see the truth in any heart. You are my family now. Lisa, Maria, Henry, Susan, all of you. You saved me when no one else would. You showed me what freedom looks like. You gave me something to fight for. Daniel put his arm around her shoulders. It was a simple gesture, a human expression of affection and protection. Leaned into it and felt a warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. Behind them, the refugee ship followed steady and safe. Ahead of them, the stars burned with infinite possibility. And somewhere out there, other slaves were hearing stories about humans who freed the forgotten. The galaxy was about to learn an important lesson. Humans did not measure worth by strength or usefulness. They measured it by the simple belief that every thinking being deserved a chance to be free. And that made them the most dangerous allies an oppressed people could ever hope to find.